It's that time of month again where we talk about what I read last month and what I'm about to read for this month. That's right, I'm putting them back together. We're going to do the October reading wrap up and November's TBR in this video for a couple of reasons. One being that I think I like that video setup better, and it may change from month to month, but for now we're gonna go back to this. And the other one being that my recording and uploading schedule is a little weird right now. I'm a little bit behind because of Inktober. If you haven't seen any of the Inktober videos, I highly recommend if you like thinking about the writing process and idea generation, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to look at what I read this month and what I read last month and what I'm gonna read this month. Also, thanks to Inktober, I've been recording in a bunch of different spots, and so I'm coming to you from my couch today because I thought that would be a fun switch up, especially for a more laid-back video like this. That was a lot more introduction than I usually give before I say, hi, hello, welcome in, I'm Jerica, and I'm an editor, writer, and all-around content creator, and you happened into the video I already told you you're in. You're here for the October reading wrap up and November TBR. So I think let's just get into it. The stack of books. The stack of books. I don't even know if they were, in a way that you could read them. I think most of them are more readable this direction, but I don't know if I have them all facing the right way. So obviously October, I'm already a horror lover, and so of course for October I went with horror books. The first one is a big old classic. We've got Dracula. I really enjoyed it. Like I said in the TBR, like it's kind of weird that I hadn't read it, but I feel like I've done this. A lot of the classics that I've read have been like the literary classics, and I haven't read a lot of genre classics, so that's something that I want to do more. Like I haven't read Frankenstein either, so that's one that's definitely on the list for me to read. But talking about Dracula briefly, I feel like not every adaptation has done such a good job, because I definitely went into this thinking that like I really knew the story, and it's not that I was surprised by any parts of the story. I think I was more surprised by kind of like the focus of it. I knew going in that it was going to be told to me through a lot of journal entries and kind of like personal notes, but it's not quite what I was expecting, I guess. And also, I feel like it would have been an interesting addition to have more articles. I know Mina pasted in a couple articles to her diary, but I think it would have been interesting to see more from like the world perspective, but that's not really like a critique. It's just like something that I would have found interesting. I do think it's an interesting thing to look at when we think about writing epistolary novels now. And I'm brought back, I won't use any names of course, but I'm brought back to a critique group that I was a part of as part of my school program, and there was a person who wrote a story using journal entries, and it was kind of these like two conflicting journals, two very different points of view, but obviously connected. And I really enjoyed, like, I think the story was going in a really interesting place, and I really liked the writing of it, and it has nothing to do with that part. It's simply the thing that was brought to my mind was the fact that the instructor brought up the question of, like, why is it written as journal entries? And I think that's a really interesting thing. And then the other thing to think about, in my opinion, which we didn't talk about in that case, is, like, how are journal entries usually written? And this is something that was brought to mind by a podcast I listened to recently. It's just, like, I think before I read this, it was like an interview with somebody who had used journal entries as part of their story. I don't think their story was entirely told through journal entries. I could be wrong though. But something that they talked about was the shorthand that one uses when they're writing journal and diary entries. And I think that's a really interesting thing in reference to Dracula, because there, like, sometimes there's a shorthand used, especially at the very beginning, that like sets the like time and place of what's happening. Something that I think is odd but understandable and explained within is how much dialogue there is, because, and maybe this is like a product of the time, maybe it's a product of just how I have written diaries in the past, but I feel like there's a lot more paraphrasing that generally happens when you're writing a journal entry. And while paraphrasing does happen, there is a lot of straight dialogue, but to the point where it's mentioned, like, I'm trying to write this as verbatim as possible because I think it's important that these words are saved the way that they were said. So like they bring attention to it in their journal, and I think that's kind of like a key thing. And I think if you are going to write an epistolary novel, that's an important thing to think about. That was a lot more about the structure of it, but the story of it I really liked. It was really interesting how, like, I feel like I was like halfway through and I was like, I feel like I could make this party in a D&D party. Like, I feel like everybody like really played like their specific part. They had their particular knowledge and skills. And I just thought that was like really interesting, and I think it was important because it meant that none of the characters seemed like superfluous. A character that I'm upset what media has done is Van Helsing. I think, and maybe this is like a lack of seeing like the right other movies, but I feel like a lot of things have taken Van Helsing and made him into this like, this warrior almost, and that's not who Van Helsing is, and he doesn't need to be. Now, thinking about this further, I do almost want to go back to some of these adaptations and see if it's because they've made Van Helsing like an amalgam character, like if they've like just like, I don't know, because I feel like I didn't know Quincy existed. So have they just like put Quincy and Van Helsing together, and that's why Van Helsing is like now seen as like this warrior person because like somebody thought Quincy didn't matter or something, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if that's the case or not. I think there are some things that are very much a product of their time, particularly the treatment of women in the story, but like that's not a critique. It would almost be weird if they treated women differently than they do. And I don't even think it's like particularly bad. It is just very like based in like the idea of like chivalry and protecting the weak women and things like that. I think an interesting avenue to kind of go down would be slightly rewriting the story to put a little bit more emphasis on Mina being a part of the solution. I don't think that she is like she is a part of the solution, but I think it would be really interesting to have her have the like final confrontation is the word I was looking for. Like, she's obviously there, but I think it would be really interesting to maybe have her transformation go a little bit further. Her, like, show some, like, strength, like superhuman strength, and, like, be the one to do the thing. I feel like I've spoiled a lot, but I feel like this is, like, one book that, like, everybody knows the story of. I will put a spoiler tag up here somewhere. Because I literally talked about like the last scene just now. Or maybe I'll cut it out, we'll see. But I think that would be interesting, and then I think examining who Lucy has chosen to make her victims is like a really interesting thing to think about. And I feel like that could be like a whole like side thing, especially if, again, like we altered the story a little bit and like allowed her to hunt for a little bit longer, and maybe adaptations have done that. Maybe they've done that with Mina as well. Those are kind of like some interesting things that would completely change the story, but are kind of like, ooh, like fan fiction, or like whatever. Like just thinking about like where else the story could have gone had it gone a little differently. Overall, I liked it though. That's what we're really here for, is whether or not I liked this book, and there will probably be a more in-depth review at some point. But let's move on to the next one, which I also feel like I have a lot to say, which was The In Crowd. The In Crowd. Which is... I almost DNF'd it. I almost DNF'd it a couple of times. But there were reasons that I wanted to keep going. So it's a YA horror, and that's part of the reason that I wanted to read it. Is because I really like horror, and I was kind of curious how horror would be tackled in YA. Unfortunately, I feel like the writing isn't that good. And so like, like first page, like I'm pretty sure first page, like I read some stuff to Red. Do I call him Red here, or do I call him Ben here? I don't even know. I think I call him Ben here. Whatever. It's the same guy. If you hear Red and Ben, they're the same guy. Yeah, no, absolutely. The first page, I like read stuff out. I was like, this is bad. And then like there are some parts that are like fine, and then other parts that are really bad. And not a whole lot of parts that I would say are really good as far as the writing quality goes. But part of me was like, is that because it's for a younger audience and so we have to keep it like really simple, but at the same time there are simple ways to have written it better? Whatever. So the writing itself, not that great in my opinion. And the story, also not that great in my opinion. So one of my biggest issues with The In Crowd was that it felt like the horror took a backseat despite being classified as a YA horror. Like, the series is called Iggy Not on the keyboard. Okay, I don't think he pressed anything. Dude, please. Now I don't know what I was saying, little guy. Or big guy. The other one's the little guy. You can sit here if you want. That would be very cute, in fact. I don't know what I was saying. I know that I was about to talk about the narrative of it. Oh, I felt like the horror took a backseat, and it's classified as a YA horror, so that really bothered me that it seemed to be more about the, like, romance of it all. Like, they were intertwined, but I felt like it was very much like a romance book that would then have like a paragraph of horror, and it would be like really shocking. Like, and I think that's something that was like extra weird, because I was expecting them to like have horror throughout but kind of tone it down because it's for a younger audience. But it was kind of gruesome. Like, they didn't go into great detail, but it was shocking. Like, the first person who gets hurt, it's shocking. And then they kind of, like, pull back. And I'm like, if I was writing that for an adult audience, that could be, like, really gruesome, and there could be a lot of really interesting description, but because it's for a younger audience, they couldn't. So, like, why'd they go with such a, like, gory option and then not be able to, like, lean into the gore? Anyways, so I found that the, like, amount of horror wasn't what I wanted, and then this is something else that I wonder if it's because I am an adult reading it, especially an adult who like really thinks about like story structure and writing and stuff. But the twist wasn't a twist. Like it was like the like I was sitting there like trying to come up with like interesting things that could have happened, that could have been the twist, and then I'm like, oh, it was just the thing that was very obvious the entire time. And so part of me is like, is it because a younger audience like hasn't experienced enough stories, so they wouldn't guess that right away? They would like, or maybe they do what I did and think like, oh, it can't be the obvious thing. I don't really know, but the payoff for it wasn't good enough for me. But I do just wonder if it is about the audience age. So I want to try reading some more YA horror. So if you have YA horror recommendations, please leave them in the comments for me. Because is it just not great? Or is this what the YA horror genre looks like? I guess is kind of what I'm getting at. Yeah. So that's everything that I read in the month of October. So we now move on to the TBR. So the TBR starts with a book that we talked about for October. It is another horror book, and I did technically start it. I'm not very far into it, but I have technically started it. Iggy, please don't step on the keyboard, buddy. Which is Flowers in the Attic by Virginia Andrews. I'll read the thing to you. Even though we read it last time, I'll read it to you again. So it says, it was a game of happy families. The four children had such perfect lives in such a happy golden family. It was a game of hide and seek. Their father died suddenly. The children now lived alone, hidden in the airless attic. It was a case of tender, loving murder. Their mother promised they would stay only long enough to inherit the fortune, but gradually she forgot how much she adored those children. Flowers in the Attic, the compelling story of a family's betrayal and heartbreak, love and revenge. So, because I have started this, I don't want to say too much, because I already know some stuff that, like, isn't on the back cover kind of thing. Not a lot, because we're basically, like, just getting to, like, what's on the back cover. But the reason I'm reading it is because I'm kind of like just continuing what I had already started for the October TBR. I knew that I probably wouldn't finish this when I had finished Dracula, and so that's why I read the Terror Academy book first, which is exactly what I said I would do, but there were enough days left in October that I was like, I kind of just want to stick with this and then build my TBR after that. So, there are two more books that don't necessarily fit in. They're more mystery-based. I haven't even decided which one I'll read next. I kind of picked them based on, like, vibes and not a lot of knowledge. Like, I feel like I haven't even finished reading the back covers of them. I just kind of, like, got a gist of it. So, let's talk about those, because I'll have a little bit more to say, because I talked a little bit about this one already, and also I don't want to talk too much about it because I've started it, and it feels a little bit like cheating. So the other books are City of Bones by Michael Connelly and Missing You by Harlan Coben. I think that I've read a book by Harlan Coben before, and I think I had some issues with it, but it was a while ago, and I'm not positive that it was him. I will maybe try to do a search and see if I can figure out which book it was. And if it was him, but I clearly have a thing with bad metaphors and terrible similes that just bothers me, and I can remember one from that book that was describing the skyline as a chocolate bar, and I was like, that's just not good. And this was, I don't know, 10 years ago. So it was pre me going to school and like really, really thinking about like writing and stuff. Because all of my previous thinking about reading was more like literary analysis, which isn't really about like the quality of writing necessarily. It's about like the ideas and the content more so. Not that you don't also look at like metaphors and things, but anyways, maybe that's why that's something that's always bothered me. But let's read the backs of these, and then I'll have a better idea of what I'm even talking about. I just kind of wanted to mention that, I guess. So we'll start with this one, Missing You by Harlan Coben. It says, surfing an online dating site, NYPD detective Kat Donovan feels her whole world explode. Staring back at her is her ex-fiancé, the man who shattered her heart and whom she hasn't seen in 18 years. But when Kat reaches out to the man in the profile, an unspeakable conspiracy comes to light. As Kat begins to investigate, her feelings are challenged about everyone she's ever loved, even her father, whose cruel murder so long ago has never been fully explained. With lives on the line, including her own, Kat must venture deeper into the darkness than she ever has before and discover if she has the strength to survive what she finds there. I'm interested enough, I think, to know what this conspiracy is, but I feel like I don't know well enough what kind of book this is, if that makes any sense, because it starts off with her being an NYPD detective, but does this mean that she goes like not off the record? Maybe that's fine. But does this mean that she's like not using, like not going through the police to figure out whatever this is? So she's, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a word I'm looking for here that's about a detective that's not doing it through the proper channels. Okay. Let's read the other one. This is basically for me to decide which one I'm going to read first. So the other one is City of Bones by Michael Connolly. And it says, on New Year's Day, a dog finds a bone in the Hollywood Hills and unearths a murder committed more than 20 years earlier. It's a cold case, but for Detective Harry Bosch, it stirs up memories of his childhood as an orphan. He can't let it go. As the investigation takes Bosch deeper into the past, a beautiful rookie cop brings him alive in the present. No official warning can break them apart or prepare Bosch for the explosions when the case takes a few hard turns. Suddenly all of LA is in an uproar, and Bosch, fighting to keep control, is driven to the brink of an unimaginable decision. Okay, so the first sentence grabs me far more in this, and then they bring in the romance plot line, and it's whatever. I don't hate romance plot lines. It feels like I've said a lot of things about like, oh, like I really like platonic relationships, and I feel like it's made it seem like I don't want it. I just wonder why it always has to be a part of a story. I'm sure it'll work out to like have significant meaning. I was just like, I am really interested. I think this one interests me more than Missing You does. So we'll put the after Flowers in the Attic. I'll definitely read City of Bones next, because I feel like there's just some like interesting stuff here, and it, like, firstly, a dog finds a bone from a 20-year-old murder, and then it makes me wonder, how old is Detective Harry Bosch? Because it reminds him of being an orphan. So then it makes me think that, does he think that it's possible that this murder is like one of his parents? And if so, that makes him a very young detective, I would think. Unless he was orphaned at like, I mean, even if he was orphaned, I mean, how could the timeline work out? Like, if you're orphaned at like 10 years old, maybe, and that was 20 years ago, that would make you 30 now. You could be a detective by 30. I'm sure. Yeah, see, that just, I'm very interested, and then I'm curious, like, how the beautiful rookie cop plays into it, and Yeah, I mean, I'm less interested in that part. So to go back to Missing You, like I get like catfish vibes. So like it is like a little intriguing. Definitely less excited about it. We'll definitely put it like on the list like after this, but we all know that I'm not going to get to it this month because I generally read about 2 books every month. I didn't think about it until now that I should probably have some short stories on the docket. I don't think I have a crime based one, which seems to be the direction we went, but I do have some horror ones. Perhaps I say the Edgar Allan Poe collection. We'll keep that as like a very, very back burnery thing if I really feel the need to pad out the end of the month with some short stories. But shoving the short stories in the middle of the month didn't work that one time that I did it. So we'll save it for the end. And I'll insert a picture of what book that is here, because I'll have to find it. I think that's it for the reading wrap up and TBR. So as a reminder, we read Dracula, which was great, loved it. We read Terror Academy's The In Crowd. It wasn't that good. I almost DNF'd. But it also only took me like 4 days or something like that to finish it, which is very, very quick for me. And then we're going to read, and then we started reading Flowers in the Attic by Virginia Andrews. And then next up will be City of Bones. And then if by some miracle we make it through those 2, I will take a crack at Missing You. Let me know what you're reading this month. Also, let me know how this past month's reading has gone. Do you have any great recommendations for me? Because I read pretty much anything, so leave those down in the comments for me. Although we know that I'm not buying any new books right now. I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about what's left on my shelves at the end of next month, because there will be 1 month left, and there's definitely more than a month's worth of books there, and I have some thoughts about whether or not I'm going to finish them. So if you're interested in A, what's left on the shelves, and B, what I'm going to do about it, definitely hit that like and subscribe to be brought back for more. Oh, dingle the bell. That's the thing that you really got to do to get those noties on. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I had a blast. Catch you next time. Bye.